Hi, my name is Captain Andrew Lehman, South Carolina Air National Guard. This is going to be my Air Power Studies video introduction and explanation of the content of this course and what I've learned. A little bit of background on myself. I've been in the Air Guard for 15 years, a little more than 15 years. I was enlisted as a POL troop in the Alabama Guard and drove fuel trucks for approximately 5 years before I got hired for pilot training. Got hired by the South Carolina Air National Guard. I currently fly there as a four-ship F-16 flight lead. Primary duties is being a four-ship flight lead in the F-16. Other minor tasks that I help out with in the squadron: instrument instructor, squadron safety officer, as well as kind of an informal mentor to new hire pilots that we send off to officer school and pilot training. Full-time job, I'm a 767 first officer for Delta Airlines, so spend the majority of my time flying in the civilian world, and spend a handful of my days and a couple weeks out of the year as well as deployments with the Air National Guard. Looking back over the course content, I've been chipping away with it for a little more than a year, seeing as it's not my full-time job. Got a lot of other things going on, so slowly but surely getting through it, and the content was mostly pretty interesting. A lot of stuff that I've heard before over my 15 years, as well as experience prior to that, prior to joining the military. Some of the historical stuff, a little bit more insight on top of other information that I already knew. All the joint stuff and everything like that is stuff I've been hearing for a long time. So to me, that really wasn't anything new there for me as far as being an operator, looking at my core job and looking at what my core job will be for the next couple of years. Overall, when I go through looking at the biggest challenges to the Air Force, again, I'm primarily concerned with being an operator, because that is my job, and that's going to be my job until I retire. I think a lot of the stuff that we've talked about didn't really apply to that so much. But what I'm looking at as a big challenge for us is to me, it's twofold. It's maintaining the technological advantage over our adversaries. If you go across the United States Air Force, as well as all of the DoD, we've got an aging military as far as equipment goes. We've got some really nice stuff, but we don't have a whole lot of it. And we've got a lot of really old stuff, and looking at just mobility and availability of equipment all across. I think it's something we need to be cognizant of, and I think it's something that we need to invest a lot of money in, because I think it puts us at risk as far as fighting near-peer adversaries on more than one front. If we find ourselves in a armed conflict with a near-peer adversary such as a China or a Russia, it's going to leave us vulnerable stateside as well as on another front for potential conflict. So I think it's something to be cognizant of. If you look all across, if you look at just overall the health of our force, not just the people, that's obviously a concern, we all know that, more or less just talking about the equipment that we're using, making sure that we have the latest and greatest and we're investing the proper money, as opposed to just fixing up a lot of our older equipment. I think it'll pay huge benefits and huge dividends in the long run to do that. The other thing I think, just from my personal experience, I'm not citing any references because nothing I read really concerned me as far as a struggle or a potential threat for the United States Air Force, but I'm looking at it as pilot retention. I think it's a huge problem for us, and I think the Air Force is gravely mistaken on why they're having a huge problem, A, recruiting pilots, and B, retaining pilots. And the reason I'm not citing anything for this is because I'm a perfect example, because my career plan, I've easily got 10 to 15 years left if I wanted to fly, but I don't plan on it. I plan on getting promoted to major and doing my 20 and then getting out, and I'm not the only one, so I'm not afraid to say it. There's a vast number of people that plan on doing this, and they've got useful life left in them, but they are not sticking around. So I think the Air Force right now believes the problem is money and pilot training production. So they're giving pilots a lot of bonuses and incentives to stay in, but what they're failing to realize is not a lot of people are taking them, me being one of them. And then the other thing that they believe is the problem is pilot training production. So I look at it how all the recent articles that have been coming out in Air Force Magazine and Air Force Times and whatever avenue you want to choose of increasing the rate of pilot production to solve the pilot shortage problem. Well, the pilot shortage problem exists because pilots, A, aren't being recruited, and B, aren't being retained, not necessarily in that order. So I think that's a huge struggle for us, because at the end of the day, we are a giant force. We are a giant organization. But really what we are is, operationally sending airplanes into combat. I know there's obviously other fronts as far as space and et cetera, but a huge part of our mission is involving aircraft and the people that operate them. And I don't think the Air Force is taking the proper steps to retain pilots. And I think it's gonna show its head later on down the road, as the Air Force is seeing a lot of the more experienced aviators that they've kind of leaned on in the past to train the new guys and gals are slowly getting out. I shouldn't say slowly; they're getting out at an increasingly rapid rate, and I see it being a huge threat to the U.S. Air Force later on down the road. And I'm hoping somehow the Air Force leadership gets the idea that it really has nothing to do with money and pilot training production. So I'm looking forward to the rest of this course and moving on down the road and continuing my career. Thank you for your time.